If your fiancée suddenly said she needed space to think about her future, and then used that time to start seeing someone new, what would you do? I'll tell you what I did. I sold our house, vanished across state lines, and left no trail. Now she's reaching out every day, letters, calls, even showing up at my cousin's place, asking for forgiveness. But let me take you back to how it started. I'm Thomas, 33, and up until 6 months ago, I was engaged to a woman I believed I'd grow old with. Let's call her Natalie, 30. We met at a 4th of July barbecue thrown by mutual friends in Kentucky. She was charming, witty, with this easy laugh that made people turn their heads. She asked me about the coleslaw I made, and somehow, that became our first conversation. We dated for almost 4 years. Moved in together during the pandemic, and then last fall, I proposed at a quiet park where we always walked our dog, Murphy. She cried, said yes, and for a while, it felt like everything was falling into place. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch-style home in Tennessee, with a big yard and a finished basement I planned to turn into a game room. She wanted a reading nook by the fireplace and a kitchen with farmhouse accents. We were planning a fall wedding, late October. Rustic theme, apple cider donuts instead of a cake, her idea, and a bluegrass band for the reception. But then in March, everything changed. It started small. Natalie began acting distant, not cold exactly, but like her mind was always somewhere else. She stopped asking me about my work at the machine shop and started spending more time texting people I didn't know. She said it was just friends from an online book club. I didn't want to be suspicious. I'd always trusted her. But the change was too noticeable. Then came the conversation. We were eating takeout in the living room, burgers and sweet potato fries from the diner down the street. I remember this clearly because she only picked at hers. That's when she said, "Tom, I need a little space. I just need to figure out what I really want." I was stunned. I asked her what that meant. Were we breaking up? She said no. I just need a couple of weeks to clear my head. She said she wasn't leaving me, just needed time away. Maybe stay with her friend Kayla for a bit. I need to understand if what we have is really forever, she said. I didn't fight her on it. I just sat there, numb. The next day, she packed a small suitcase and left. She kissed Murphy on the head, but barely looked me in the eyes. A week later, I found out through a mutual acquaintance, one of her co-workers at the public library, that she was staying with a guy named Eric. Not Kayla. Eric. Some guy she'd met at a community arts event a few weeks prior. Apparently, they'd been messaging for a while. That was the moment everything broke. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I didn't try to win her back. I called our real estate agent, put the house up for sale, and began packing my things. The hardest part? Packing Murphy's bed and toys. He followed me around the house like he knew something was wrong. That dog had been through everything with us, and now I was taking him away from the life he knew. I signed the final papers on the sale 3 weeks later. The buyer was a retired couple from Arkansas. I left behind the furniture, the porch swing, even the spice rack she had custom-made. I didn't want any of it. Then I drove to Minnesota, where my cousin offered me a guest room above his garage. Just me, Murphy, and 2 duffel bags. Natalie texted me 3 days after the closing. "Where are you? Why would you sell the house?" Then came the calls. Then the letters. Then one of her friends messaged me saying Natalie was a wreck and that she missed me every day. But here's the thing, she wasn't thinking about me when she walked out the door. She was thinking about him. And now? Now she wants to talk. 3 days after I disappeared, Natalie started texting like we were in the middle of a misunderstanding, not like she'd just torched our engagement and moved in with someone new. "I don't know what you're trying to prove. Can we please just talk? I didn't expect you to sell the house. Tom, I made a mistake. I ignored the first few." Then she sent a photo, Murphy's favorite toy, one she'd left behind, a squeaky hot dog plush. She captioned it, "Remember this? I didn't mean for it to go like this." It made me sick how she could bring up our dog like that would melt everything down and make it better. Like she hadn't been shacked up with someone else while calling it time to think. But the messages kept coming. The tone changed, too, from indignant to apologetic to full-on regret. And eventually, she called. I let it go to voicemail. But something in her voice cracked through me when I finally listened. I was scared. You've always had your life figured out. Your job at the auto plant, your early mornings, your plans for kids, and I didn't know if I was enough for all of it. But Eric, he wasn't anything. I was confused, and I panicked. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Let me be clear. It wasn't what she said that got to me. It was how familiar she sounded. I'd spent years with her. waking up beside her, grocery runs on Saturdays, her dad's terrible stories at Thanksgiving. It all came back in one message. I didn't respond, but I started thinking. So I reached out to her best friend, Julie. We hadn't spoken since the breakup, but I knew she was loyal to both of us, in a way. I asked her straight up, is Natalie telling the truth? Was it just emotional? Julie hesitated. I shouldn't say anything. I'm not asking for gossip, I told her. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. That's when Julie told me. She said Natalie didn't just crash at Eric's for a few days. She moved her stuff in. She cooked with him, watched movies, even posted a picture of them at a local food truck festival. Julie saw it before Natalie took it down. Said they looked cozy. So much for needing space. I drove back to town. Not to see her, to finalize paperwork and pick up a few things I'd stored at a buddy's house. While I was there, I ran into someone from the community college where I'd done a vocational training program years back. He asked how Natalie was. I smiled politely. She's doing some thinking. He laughed like it was a joke. Well, she was definitely thinking pretty hard with that guy she was with at the flea market last month. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need more. Back at my cousin's place in Minnesota, Murphy curled up beside me like he always did. I sat on the guest bed with my laptop, just staring at an empty Word document. I wanted to write something. A letter. Closure. Anything. Instead, I opened Zillow. I started looking at rentals closer to where I could start fresh, near Madison, Wisconsin. Affordable places where Murphy would have a yard, and I could be closer to an apprenticeship program through a beneficial partner I'd researched, a dual education track with hands-on training and online coursework in logistics. A new direction. That night, Natalie called again. This time, I answered. Hi, she said. Her voice was quiet, like she wasn't sure if I'd yell or hang up. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, why him? There was a pause. He made me feel like I had no expectations on me. Like I could just be nothing. With you, everything was real. The house, the dog, the future. And that scared you? I asked. Yes, she said. But it wasn't real with him. It was escape. I see that now. I told her she'd already made her choice. That I had nothing left to give. That's when she said, can I see you? Just once. Just to talk. I told her I'd think about it. But in my gut, I already knew the answer. And still, a part of me wanted to hear her out. Because when you've built your life with someone, your heart doesn't stop just because your brain sees the truth. I wish I could say things started getting quieter. That after Natalie poured out her version of regret, she left it at that and gave me space. But that's not how this story goes. 3 days after our call, I came back from the hardware store. I've been helping my cousin fix up an old porch swing in his backyard, and there she was. Natalie, standing at the bottom of the steps leading up to the garage apartment I'd been staying in. She was wearing that green flannel I bought her last Christmas. Hair pulled back, like she didn't want this to look like some dramatic reunion, but her eyes were glassy. Puffy, even. She had a tote bag over her shoulder, and she was holding something. A baby onesie. I stopped in my tracks. Didn't even put the key in the door. She looked up at me and said, can we talk? Please. I didn't say yes. I just stood there. She took that as an opening. I didn't come here to beg you to take me back. I just need to be honest. I stepped aside and let her follow me upstairs. Murphy watched her, tail still, ears low. He remembered. We sat across from each other, her on the old futon, me on the desk chair. I didn't ask why she brought a baby onesie. I figured that would come out eventually. And it did. She's pregnant. That's what she said. And she thinks it's mine. She said the timeline lined up. That we'd been together shortly before she left to figure things out, and that once she was with Eric, she never really thought to consider the possibility of being pregnant until a few weeks later. I asked her point blank, are you saying you don't know whose it is? She hesitated. I didn't expect to be here, like this. I didn't think I'd need to ask. I sat back. My hands were cold. Everything slowed down in that moment. Why tell me now? I asked. She bit her lip. Because I want to do the right thing. Because I don't want to lie anymore. And because if this baby is yours, I don't want to start their life with more confusion and brokenness. She started crying. Softly, not dramatically. The kind of crying that feels exhausted. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her flannel and looked at me again. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. But if this baby is yours, I want them to know you. And I'll be honest, part of me hopes this could mean, I don't know, a chance to rebuild. Somehow. I stood up. I need to think, I said. That's what you told me once, remember? She nodded, without speaking. I'm going to take a test, I added. I want to know. I brought one, she said quickly, reaching into her tote. A paternity kit. We just sent it in. No doctors yet. It felt surreal. Like I was living someone else's life. A life where your ex-fiancé shows up at your new doorstep with a paternity test and a onesie that says, Little Explorer. I told her I'd do the test. But I also told her I wasn't going to play house. That whether or not the child was mine, we were over. She looked crushed, but she didn't argue. Maybe, finally, she understood. Later that night, after she left, I sat on the floor with Murphy and stared at the test kit on the table. I didn't even know what I wanted the answer to be. If the baby wasn't mine, maybe I could finally breathe. But if it was, then what? Could I co-parent with someone who shattered my trust like it was nothing? And deeper than that, what if this was a chance to become something better? A father? A present, strong, consistent presence in a child's life? Was I strong enough to separate the child from the pain? I haven't mailed the test yet. It's sitting in my glove box. Julie called me the next day, checking in. I told her about the visit. She told me something that stopped me in my tracks. Eric's gone. Moved out of state. Didn't want to be part of the situation. Natalie's on her own now. It hit me in a weird way. Part pity, part validation. She didn't come back to me because she missed me. She came back because her plan B disappeared. And now? Now I have to decide if I'm willing to be a father to a child born from the ruins of a broken promise. I mailed the paternity test 2 days after Natalie's visit. I don't know why it took me that long. Maybe I wasn't ready to face whatever truth it carried. Maybe part of me hoped the test would disappear on its own, like if I ignored it long enough, this whole twisted detour would just fade. But real life doesn't work that way. The results arrived 10 days later, in a plain white envelope. I sat in my truck for almost 20 minutes before I opened it. Murphy was in the passenger seat, his head on my lap like he could tell something big was happening. And there it was. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The baby is mine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in silence. My heart didn't feel broken anymore, just exhausted. Like it had nothing left to give. It wasn't about Natalie. It wasn't about the betrayal or the heartbreak. It was about this little person coming into the world, who hadn't asked for any of this. I called her. She answered on the first ring. I got the results, I said. She was quiet. Then asked, is it mine to hope for? It's mine, I replied. And I'll take care of my responsibilities. But we need to talk boundaries. That's when things shifted. She started talking fast about nursery colors, co-parenting plans, her appointment next week, and how we could attend together. She even mentioned how her lease would be up soon and wondered if we should look for something bigger. I stopped her mid-sentence. No, Natalie, I'm not moving in. I'm not playing house. We're not getting through this together. We're co-parents. That's it. She went quiet again. I could feel her disappointment through the line, like she was hoping that baby meant we'd rewrite the past. Then she said something that caught me completely off guard. What if we tried counseling? Not as a couple, as parents. It threw me for a loop. It wasn't a demand. Just a thought. And strangely, I didn't hate the idea. I said I'd think about it. And I meant it. Because here's the truth. I want to be there for my child. I want to show up. I want them to grow up knowing that their dad didn't run. That I didn't punish them for something they had no part in. But I also knew I needed support, legal and emotional. So I called a family law attorney in Madison and scheduled a consultation. She was kind, thorough, and helped me understand my rights as a father. We discussed shared custody, parenting agreements, and even mediation sessions, which could be a productive way to set expectations without conflict. Natalie agreed to attend mediation. To her credit, she showed up, listened, and didn't argue when I said I wanted equal involvement. We spent an hour listing goals, stable housing, consistent schedules, shared holidays. Not once did I bring up the past. She did, though. As we were packing up, she looked at me and said, "You don't even look at me the same anymore." I replied, "Because I'm not the same." Later that week, she invited me to the first ultrasound appointment. I debated saying no, but I went. The doctor was professional and warm, and when the image came on the screen, that flickering little heartbeat, something in me just stopped. This is real. This is happening. And I'm a father. I didn't hold Natalie's hand. I didn't cry. But I stood there with my arms crossed and tears in my eyes, watching the screen like I was watching the first page of the rest of my life. Afterward, Natalie asked if I wanted to grab a bite to eat. I said no. I told her I'd text her later to confirm the next doctor visit. She looked disappointed again, like part of her still hoped I'd snap out of this and become the man who wanted her back. But that man doesn't exist anymore. It's been almost 2 months since I got the paternity results. Natalie's due date is approaching faster than either of us seems ready for. We've stayed in touch, but only through the co-parenting app and occasionally during medical visits. No more personal texts. No calls unless it's urgent. She's been respectful, at least on the surface. We've attended 2 ultrasounds together, and to her credit, she doesn't overstep. She updates me when she's supposed to. We've agreed on a temporary shared custody plan for after the baby's born, and my attorney finalized the parenting agreement this week. Everything's been civil, predictable, even. And then, earlier this week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in Natalie's handwriting. Inside was a thick envelope, a smaller one labeled for later, and a hardcover photo album. I sat at the kitchen table, Murphy lying across my feet, and opened it. It was us. Years of photos, dating back to the early days of our relationship. Our first vacation to Maine. The Halloween we dressed as a lumberjack and a tree. Christmas mornings. The day we brought Murphy home from the shelter. Our engagement photos. She'd gone through and captioned each one in tiny, neat handwriting. You were always the steady one. I didn't know real safety until this day. This is when I started dreaming of kids with you. Halfway through, I had to close the book and walk away. The flood of memory was too much. When I returned, I opened the second envelope. Inside was a letter. A long one. She talked about regret. About confusion. About the pressure she'd felt to be ready for everything when she wasn't even sure she was enough for herself. She apologized again, but this time, with no strings attached. No hopes of getting back together. I know I broke something in you. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope someday you'll tell our child the kind of man their father really is. Because even when I couldn't see it, you were always him. At the end, she asked one thing. Would you consider naming the baby with me? I closed the letter. Sat there for a long time. And then, I said yes. We met at a coffee shop the next day. Neutral ground. I brought a list of names I liked. So did she. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in a year. No pretending. No romantic fog. Just 2 people trying to do right by the life they created. We settled on 2 names. One for a boy. One for a girl. Either way, we both agreed. The child would carry my last name. She didn't argue. The baby's due next month. I've signed the lease on a 2-bedroom apartment closer to where Natalie lives, so I can be available for split parenting without moving in. My cousin helped me furnish it, second-hand stuff, mostly, but clean and cozy. I've set up a nursery corner with a crib, a bookshelf, and a rocking chair. I spend a lot of time in that chair lately, thinking, not about Natalie anymore, but about what kind of father I want to be. So here's where I'll leave you, Reddit. If someone asks for time to think, let them. But don't put your life on hold for their confusion. You deserve someone who chooses you clearly, consistently, and without running toward distractions. And if life hands you something unexpected, a detour, a broken engagement, a child born from a fractured relationship, it doesn't have to be the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a different kind of love. A better kind. One with purpose. I'll never forget what Natalie did. But I've forgiven it, in the quiet, private way forgiveness sometimes needs to happen. Not for her. For me. For the little life that's about to call me Dad. Thank you all for being here through this. You've helped more than you know. Thomas.